Hi there, everybody. Hopefully this is working. This is the first time I'm trying this using XSplit. Hi there, everybody. Hopefully this is working. This is the first time I'm trying this using XSplit. Hi there, everybody. Hopefully this is working. This is the first time I'm trying this using XSplit. Hi there, everybody. Hopefully this is working. This is the first time I'm trying this using XSplit. Hi there, everybody. Hopefully this is working. This is the first time I'm trying this. I have no idea if this is any better, because I was getting all kinds of nasty reverb for some strange reason. It shows that there's still some viewers, but I don't have any chat right now. So I'm going to see if I can generate some chat, because I was going to work on obviously some bolt action figures here, my Winter Russians. So I'm going to see what's going on here. Well, now I don't have... Alright, let's try this. So I'm going to move this screen over here. I'm going to move my chat over here, and if anybody can hear me, then that's fine. They can say a shout out, a hello, something like that. So some of these are a little more done than others. Obviously that mullet, this is a guy that's a little more developed right here. So he's got his little flaming Molotov, and this medic was one that I'd done for myself. And I'm going to see if I can get another one done here while I'm trying to do this. I wanted to do this in XSplit because I've got these reference pictures dancing around the corner here. So I'm going to see right there, down here, over here. Can't really do that with just regular YouTube Live. And I'm just going to throw out a few different colors here. Mostly be working with some secret weapon colors here. Oh, hey, Bethany. So it looks like this will work, having the two together. Sorry about the crazy reverb and all that. I have no idea what the world was going on there. I've probably seen 30 hours worth of XSplit tutorials and such things, trying to figure out how to make all that work, but that was not something that was covered. Yeah, I think, oh man, we tried doing, I think it was a Google Hangout on air. This was years ago, and Kathy and I were trying to do it together, and it was picking up, that I could understand because it was picking up her mic and my mic and everything else. But here, this machine does not have any speakers. The only sound output is the headset that I'm using right now. So hopefully people can still hear what I'm saying. Now while I have this color too, I might also work on this base right here. There's a few things I might throw out here. But this stuff needs to be ready for tomorrow, because Roy and I are going to be doing, it won't be a video battle report, but it is going to be another pictorial battle report like some of the ones you've already seen us do for Eastern Front. Alright, so thanks Bethany, appreciate that. Yeah, it's going to be a mystery. I think I'll just ask somebody else that is also using XSplit what was potentially causing all that crazy sound reverb. I'm going to be doing this for at least a couple hours, so there should be plenty of opportunity to show a few things. So here, as you can see by the reference pictures, it's a whole lot of tan. but there's ways to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to grab this one here, so I wanted to have this one with me. Now, I don't know if you can see. Well, let's make sure the light is shining that. So see here, see all this green down in here. You can see there's green on this side. In the shadow areas, I've got these greenish colors working. And the whole idea behind that is to just make it less dead, less boring. And I'm going to do the same thing here. At this point, I'm just working on what I call the midtones. It's an art term, but it's kind of a logical term. It's midtones. It's halfway between light and dark, roughly halfway. So even here on this guy, you can see there's actually almost some reds in there. A little bit of reds. I'm gonna move this over. Yeah, I had moved my light, and that would explain why that was a little bit dark. And I'm just gonna bounce from figure to figure. And even when I lighten these up a little bit, I am going to use different colors for the lights. So I'm not just going to grab a lighter tan and move my keyboard out of into a safer position. I might use something like this, some kind of almost an off-white green. And I might even use, this is Made in Flesh. It's essentially what I use for an off-white. I consider all these my whites. I have sort of a yellowish one, a reddish one, tannish one, and they're just, I don't want to get in there and use white, because white, whenever I hear people say, oh man, I got chalky colors going on, that's one of the reasons why. See, I'm still kind of mystified as to, I guess I'm going to have to do it this way instead of just clicking. When I was in XSplit, it said something like, click here to be able to view your stream, and it must have made it more like, hey, here's how you can watch yourself, as in like other people watching me, and maybe that's where the reverb came from. Again, we'll see when I get a chance to ask some other people. So all I'm trying to do here is get things about to the same level, because some of these are a little bit more developed than others. You can see a difference here too. So she is just essentially straight up primer here, done some initial glazes and washes to establish some shading, tone some things down. You'll see no shading there. So once I get these guys to a certain level of midtones, then I'm going to go back and on that medic figure, throw in some quick glazes on that so you can see how these guys ended up the way they were. So here we go. This guy still needs some of his midtones. One of the reasons I'm doing these is actually to help a buddy of mine who, after painting a whole bunch of his Russians, he lost interest painting this much tan. And it's not the first time I've heard somebody talk about that when they were painting bolt action figures. Because, well, there's, guess what, a lot of tan, there's a lot of green, there's a lot of tan, there's even more green, and then when you're done with the green, there's more tan, and you see where I'm going with this. So people sometimes, they just, it's not like a 40K or especially a fantasy army, where you're going to see more bright colors. So the brushes, as always, I'm using my, there we go, let's get her. You can see how much those are. Comes in a pack of 12. Usually get these from Hobby Lobby. Get them mostly from anywhere. You don't have to necessarily get that type. It's one that I happen to like a lot. There's a few ways we can get some darks on this. We can use some liner paints. So we've got sepia liner here. And where's my brown liner? You've got that over here somewheres. There's gray. Let's bring out the gray liner too. So we got a couple of other liner paints. All of these from Reaper. Throw this out here. Sometimes you just don't get cooperation. And you got pins here. This is one way I unclog these things without stabbing myself. So now it actually comes out the way it's supposed to. And what I like about this, you can see that. You can turn this into I'm going to grab myself a little bit of that sepia liner to get a little bit of tan in here. I've got my sponges over here. They're ready to go. Let's begin. Like so. Going right over the top here. Now I want to let gravity do its thing. Make sure every so often I might actually change this, so now it's got a little more of the sepia liner in it. Move around starting at the top. And here as I work my way down, it's just to pull the liquid down the length of the figure. You can see this is not just, it's being applied pretty rough, but there is some rhyme and reason to this. And you can see that I use almost natural breakpoints, natural stopping points, so that it's not just flooding its way down the whole figure. And we're almost set here. Then we can get in with the sponges, a couple different kinds. We've got the sponges like so, and you can see we're going to remove not all of it, but a portion. Let's say you want a little more control. We got these right here. See how it's removing some of that wash. But what's happening, especially with the liner paints, is they'll just really get down into those crevices there, stay there. So we've established some real quick shading. And this is actually going to end up being blue, as you saw, because it's a medic here, and just going to throw some in here too. We'll do the same thing to get rid of some of the excess. Now, what I can also do, since I have that nice dark color out, I'm just going to grab something else that needs to be dark. And I know I was talking about bolt action figures, but look how much darker that is. I can thin it down with water here. This is why I always have tons of figures around me, because I never know when all of a sudden, you know what, I got too much here, and my choices are just let it dry out and go be wasted, or got my same sponge here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Why not utilize what's out here? And remember that whole notion of, wow, boy, I get really bored just painting the same thing over and over. We're still sort of painting the same colors that we just were, but we've changed the movie a little bit. just, for the heck, I'm going to throw, this is a little bit of a kind of a reddish brown. It's called Old Rust from Secret Weapon. And I'm going to make this a little more reddish. I'm going to hit this branch here. If you look at some of my Facebook Live sessions, I think I've got 2 recorded sessions on how I make this kind of a base, which I ingeniously called bark and branch, because guess what? That's what it's made out of. Bark laying on the street / sidewalk, branches also laying on the street / sidewalk. So there we go. Got that, and where is my, here we go. So here's something I was working on a session last night. And again, I can see some of those same colors down in the base here on the, whatever, the scales, horns, whatever you want to call those things. Even here on this base, I can get in here with some of these colors. I'm just going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to do this one little section over here. One little section. Because I thought maybe I could paint up some of these skulls at the same time. And then just trying to get some darks down into those crevices. And I have a couple of different ways. Got my sponge. And take some of that away. And I can do the, obviously, same thing. Again, this guy, he doesn't have all those darks in there, so I can bring back the brown liner. Put some of this out here. Fortunately, it is not reclogged. And on the subject of clogs, I have a bunch of these. It's just a plastic bottle that I got on Amazon. You can see it's pretty wide, so it's easy to pour a color in there. And this never clogs. I put my blue liner in here just as an experiment, and it's so much easier to get the paint out of this. So all my favorite colors, all the liners and that sort of thing, they're all eventually going to find their way into a container like that, because, well, that's going to make my life a whole lot easier. So here we got this rock. Well, obviously, that needs to be darker than the skulls. So here we go, and just you can see how that darkens that down pretty nicely. But yet, see, I'm using the skulls here as sort of a natural stopping point. Might grab a little bit of that sepia there, and I'll just work my way down. So this base is for a creature caster's figure. And on the subject of live sessions, there's a past live session. And I'll show you this in a second. Again, it's just James Wappel, Facebook Live. So see how that looks in deference to that. But it was this guy right here. So I was working on this on a Facebook Live. And that is the base for that particular figure. So there's gonna be some lava type stuff down here. I just figured I would do that in probably another YouTube Live, something like that. All of this down here would be some kind of lava type thing. So as I'm just about out of my brown liner, as you can see, just made that a little bit darker. Gave it a little more punch. And I'm just going to throw a little bit what's left here. You're looking at how I spend the vast majority of my days and nights. That's what I do for a living, but this is the way I approach it. You can't see it here, but there are hundreds of figures of all types around me. So here we get another finished one. So again, you can see that some of them are more greenish. Even his hand has a little bit of green in it there. It's green on the face. So this is how you keep these things from getting boring. It's easy. They very rapidly can end up looking a little bit boring. So some of these, the faces are pretty well developed. Some are not. I kind of did that on purpose so you could get to see how I might go about doing the faces. So let's get ourselves a... So this is a little bit warmer here. So that's a Griffin tan. And by warmer, what I'm going to do is put this out here on the palette. And then I'm going to get this little piece of plastic over here. It's going to help you see the difference between these. So this one's not necessarily a whole lot lighter than the other one, but see how this one's almost a little more of a green right here. This one's got tons of yellow, almost orange to it. So it says tan. Both of these paints said tan. And you can see a huge difference, not just in how light or dark one is, but also as its intensity. One's you're going to see that warm one more easily because again it's your eyes. One is grayed down. That's the other thing too. So let's see what this looks like on here. You're going to notice it get a little bit. There we are. And for those that like the wet into wet method, okay, let's do this. So here's some of that. Hopefully, yeah, it looks like this is pretty well centered on the screen. You notice I didn't work on the whole figure doing the wet into wet. If you look at some of my oil painting demos, again, I got those on Facebook Live sessions, and now I've got some YouTube videos, and those are available for the patrons. So as you can see how this is starting to get lighter up here. Still darker down here. Oh, hey there. Well, that's a little bit closer to home there. How you doing? Hey, Adam. Let's see, Mount Prospect. That's trying to think of how close that is to places like was it Games Plus. Actually, all the places that game stores that we like, Grognard's and stuff. All of those are kind of in that northwestern suburban area there. But boy, it's usually so far away from us. So here's the other thing I like about this. Right, so I'm going to do a few little things here. So I've flattened it out. I'm going to set him on his side so I can see it. See how now I've widened this? It went from a point, a little bit more like a flat brush. So I'm just going to do the same. We're working our way around here. Now remember that green that I had out earlier? Yeah, boy. Well, every time we tried going to Games Plus, there was so much construction. We had to take a different way every time we went there. I think we went there maybe 6, 7 times. Each time we practically had to take an entirely different way. I like to keep these around, these lids, because poof, that can also help keep your paint from drying out. I know lots of people use the wet palette thing. As a watercolor painter, just never really got into the wet palette thing. Actually, covering up the paint's good enough. But for me, other people, now see what I can do is let's make it even wider, because I've got a wider area to cover here. And by spreading out the brush and making it less of a point, can you see I'm just following the length of his coat? It lets me do this sort of feathered type brush stroke. Here on the top of the sleeve, same thing. Where his knee is sticking into his coat. Same thing along the seam. Now, some of these mold lines are still in there because Roy he wasn't quite so worried about the mold lines. It's his army. It's just he just wanted to really get these ready so he could play with them. And when it was kind of determined that I was going to give him a little help on this, I thought, well, if I paint some of these on a Facebook Live or YouTube Live, some people can get a little bit of a lesson too. So hopefully this is helpful. I'm just glad that all the crazy sound stuff went away. It's hopefully this is being recorded. I believe probably just to my, not necessarily to YouTube, but it's on my XSplit. That was the other reason I wanted to do this, because potentially maybe I could go in and clear out that first whatever craziness, that first 30-40 seconds of sound reverb. So let's grab one of our, there we go. That's essentially the same exact body. There, that's better. You can see we've got a couple of different, some lights and darks, but also some color shifts from that original, from what we originally had there. And now something like this, I was talking about putting the green and the shadows. It would really have a dramatic effect on this. And you can see why I really like these brushes, because I can still work, do some reasonably fine things. I have just in the last day or two, I was painting teeth on stuff with these brushes. It's really amazing what you can do. So let's take some of that paint off. Let's make it more of a filbert brush. So I'm just kind of working on this guy first to also, again, give you a sense of what it is that I'm trying to do across all of these figures here. And all the while, see, I've still got this lighter green, and I've been actually adding it to the warmer light color. Looks like this is in a decent spot for you to see it. Believe it or not, I'm still trying to figure out exactly where the camera needs to go, how much lighting there needs to be. One thing I'm seeing is that essentially each figure is very different, and you pretty much have to reset it for each one. There is no one size fits all. That's made it a little bit more difficult to do certain types of things that I wanted to do, especially in the live sessions, because I'm not quite sure people are real interested in me spending time adjusting my camera and my lights. Also, some things like, the Google Hangouts, it reverses my angle. So you saw me moving this thing kind of almost off the screen. It's because I was used to, the last few days, I've been doing Google Hangouts. And going that direction actually would have centered it. When you're using something like XSplit here, and I'm recording, it's I call it the true perspective. It's when I move it the way I think I'm moving it, it goes where I think it should go. So you can see we've added a decent amount of light. Now down here, I can't do as much highlighting down here as I do up here, for obvious reasons. This is closer where the light is. Back in the day, I can remember, I think I was painting Space Marines or whatever, and I pretty much made the highlights on the ends of the feet. It'd be almost as bright as the highlights on the top of the head. So we have more geniuses at work outside setting off fireworks. So much, I guess I was almost kind of hoping it might rain because that would eliminate that sound. So where's my guy that has the same body? Here we go. So there's your difference. Boom. And no time at all, we got some nice highlighting. But we've got some variation. So see, there's reds and tans in here. So I was talking about green. While we got those other colors covered up. Let's try this. So this is another secret weapon color. It's called verdigris dark green. There's a few verdigris. You might see a couple. I'm actually going to see a few of these other ones in here. So there's pale green and there's blue. Yeah, it's a weathering paint, but you can use these for whatever. I use it for vehicles, terrain, bases. I mean, you've seen it. Use all of it. So got a little bit of my brown liner left. Let's get this guy back up here, and especially down here. See, I just, it's almost like a little bit of a glaze down there. See how watery the paint is on my finger there? Right there. That just makes that a little more interesting. Now, right now, it's kind of shiny. Can't really see it. But if I go back here, you know, it starts to enhance the difference between that light and the dark. The other reason I'm adding a little bit of this green is that this, the belt straps there, that's actually going to be a little more on the reddish side. Let me find a few more shadows here. I'm also going to do that on his fur hat. So I'm essentially getting some green in the shadow areas there. Same thing here. Take some of that away, and now I can make it broader. Like so, because you can see, oh, boom. See this reference picture here that the brush is pointing to? Yeah, that's tan, but there's a lot of green in it. Even these guys up here, there's still some greens. There's reddish tan, there's some green, there's a little bit of everything there. So this is what I like about the weathering paints. You can see I added a few touches paint there, and it's transparent, so all I did was tint those a little bit. Now that this is drying, you can start to see the green. You can do this to fantasy figures. You got a cloak or whatever. It would be just as nice on those. And I think I've got myself a fantasy figure around here somewhere. Again, the same thing where things were shifted around here. That same green was used, especially here on the cloak. That same green, call it a weathering paint, but used on a cloak. So now, got my other off-white here. Let's throw some of this down on the palette, like so. You can see how much lighter that is. And actually gonna mix a little touch of green in there, and they say, holy smokes, Jim, that's not what color the fur should be on the hat. It's not necessarily that color. It's what your eye is going to translate it to, which at this point pretty much translates to white. Touch it with my finger to rough it up a little bit. So I'll keep going here. And there's nothing to say I can't go in, say, with the brown liner paint. Do some glazes over the top of this. Tone that down if I feel it's too bright. Let's see how this is. Let me get it right here. See how that doesn't really completely cover that. It's something I, in a way, found by accident. The glazes aren't necessarily just for making something darker or just even for tinting it. You can do a little bit more. Let's get some more of this here. You can do light glazes. That was kind of a key breakthrough that I made when I discovered that. That was something I wasn't really expecting. Not expecting that at all. Now the advantage is, let's go in here. Let's just grab some of the straight up off-white color. Yep, I'm just about in focus. See how much lighter that is. So even though it was a layer of paint, because it was done transparently and it let some of the other colors show through. Now when I grab a pure version of it, it's got a little more of the white. I can see now by default here, like we're getting some highlights along that edge. Highlights here. Highlights here. Top edge there. And once I finish fooling around with that, I'm going to find another guy that's got himself a hat. So, yeah, so here, now this hat, I can do exactly the opposite. Let me get this where you can see it. So now we've got ourselves, got some highlights up here, and then it starts to recede down here. Same thing, let's just pop in a few more, leave it go. And now, remember that brown liner that I had? Mix it with a little bit of this. So see how this is, I had another color and I just kind of slapped it on there. See how this is going to tone that down? I'm not necessarily darkening. So see how we got all these crazy little hard edges right here? See here, we've mitigated those so it starts to look more blended. Gonna do the same thing now. We'll flip that back over. Flip that back over and do the same thing. Tone down those edges. There's a few reasons why these guys are in different states of completion. I've actually been saving them for a while for just an occasion like this, because people get interrupted. Something's happening, whatever. We've had home repairs, like yesterday there was a platoon of guys here putting a roof on the house. Wasn't going to be able to get a whole lot of painting done. But I was at one point, I got so used to the house shaking and everything else, I just said screw it, and I went ahead and started painting some things. Not super detailed things, but sometimes you just get stopped right in the middle of something, and you just have no other choice. And I've seen it happen with people where they get kind of lost. They have no idea how to pick these things back up again. So let's grab something that's different, because we've already got a coat like this. But real quick, I'm going to grab me some form of red here. I think this is another rust. So red rust. Also, secret weapon. Tiny bit of that out there. I'm just going to do this one belt so you can see the difference that makes. Looks like you can see that. And now, remember that was all tan. The dramatic difference this makes. Remember that green that I put there? That green is going to play off of this red. Now, people wouldn't necessarily say, well, that's the classic, like Christmas green and Christmas red. Nope, this is definitely not. There's no Christmas in this here. So while I've got it, I'm also going to hit the stock here. even the strap back to the stock. Just a touch here. Hopefully, yeah, it's sort of on camera. Move that back around, and guess what? I happen to have a color here that can highlight this a little bit. Bring this back where you can see it. Just put a little bit of light there. I don't think I want to highlight this a whole bunch. It is making a nice flesh tone though. Man, that's about where you can see it. So you can see that little highlight I just put on there? That's with a craft brush that I was just using to do glazes a second ago. So you can see here on his boots, I can almost leave those be because there is a little different shading down there. That was actually some, I think that was some blue mixed with the brown liner there. So let's highlight a few places here on the strap. Try to get a little wood grain on the stock. And this is, yeah, if this was one of mine, I'd be doing a lot more detail on it. But again, this is, don't want it to be too far removed from what Roy's stuff looks like. So where's my guy that had the same body? That's a dramatic difference right there. Big difference, same body. We can go back to him too. Hopefully I can get to my metals. So that is what we're going to try and do. Let's take one of these guys, like we said, maybe this chap right here. And we're going to go backwards a little bit in the process. Here, let's grab some of this. I don't think in any of the Facebook Live sessions that I've done so far, I don't think I actually have my little color preserver thing out on the palette. I think usually there it's a very specific lesson, so I'm just painting usually one figure, and that's it. I'm gonna grab one other. I have enough paint in the brush here. You figure, why the heck not? And if anybody's got questions or anything like that, just feel free to ask. I'll try every so often to do a little kind of review of what I was doing. So I'm gonna grab one more. Let's grab him. And you can see here, just based on the colors that are already on him, see how that's almost more of a reddish tan right there? That is, I was hoping, because I saw him sitting down there, I said, oof, he looks kind of on the greenish side. Which means now I don't have to add that. So you can see how you got some variations to the tans. And I'm going to grab my Molotov guy here because we want to get him done. And the reflections there, that's all done with my Vallejo fluorescent paints. If I can, I'll try and get to that. So let's put these 4 here. Let's lighten this up a bit here. I might even take a little bit of that bluish color to tone it down. Bring it back up here. Now this should also be lighter, which it is. People say, oh, Jim, holy smokes, look at that edge there. A couple of different ways here. This is a new brush. Doesn't have, because I can go in here and scumble away at that edge if I want. I know, I think it's Matt DePietro. I think he calls his version the 2-brush blending. maybe a few people call it that. Sometimes I just go ahead and do finger painting because I've got 10 of them. It means I got 10 brush blending, actually 11 brush blending. Oof, I should just coin that phrase right there, put it on t-shirts. I do this all the time. As you can tell, usually when people see me, my hands are covered in paint. That would be the reason why. Remember the sponges. You could do it that way too. So it's not just for removing the darker colors. So let's do some of that here. I think we've got this. Hey there, Gilbert. How's it going? I wasn't sure if you were going to be doing a hangout. Speaking of hangouts, Gil's got the Styrene Syndicate hangouts going on. Check out his YouTube page. There is a ton of knowledge going on. Because last night it was pretty cool because it was like one person being the student, being me, and 5 teachers in the room, that being all the other lads from the Styrene Syndicate, learning all kinds of fantastic things about some of the kits that I'm going to be painting. So yeah, you can watch those guys. They do some really fantastic stuff. You can check out all of Gilbert's fantastic airbrush techniques that he does. So that was really fun. We were doing that for how many hours last night? I think that was a good 4.5 hours or so. And actually, the result of that, yeah, if you go to his YouTube channel, you can see I was painting the lizard man there. This guy was painting this during the Styrene Syndicate hangout. So you can go there, check that out. I was hoping that if I did this during the regular nighttime hours as opposed to my usual 2:30, 3, 4 in the morning, maybe it could be a little more accessible to my fellow Americans. So see here, I just plop that on there. I've got my sponge here, just like I was taking away some of the excess darker paint. Well, it stands to reason. It should work just fine with lighter colored paint. And I do this all the time. It's not just on figures that are going to be used for my bolt action. Well, my bolt action armies, there's no difference between those figures and any display figure I'd be doing. But again, this is for Roy. So you can see the difference there. We're already starting to get some of that shading going. Yeah, 4 or 5 hours because that started about 6:30. I think we jumped off around midnight our time. Poor Jeebus, it was 1 something in the morning for him. But then Jeebus saves. Alright. A few more touches of light. Try not to get too bogged down on one guy. So I wanted to get that one figure. Kind of show you, I don't know, in slow-mo how this was going to work. Because you can see now things are moving pretty fast. Moving fast. You notice how I just kind of went with the side of the brush there. It lets me take it instead of just the point. Now I have a much bigger brush. So I know people will use the side of the brush to, what was that, edge highlighting or edging or something like that, whatever. Well, if I use the side of the brush here, check this out. So yeah, it looks like, see it. Check that out. You can make the brush bigger than it is. I'm going to bring this down here. But see, I catch a little bit of an edge there. And see, oh, okay, that's something I can highlight. Let's turn him over this way. Turn him over this way. do the same thing, so I'm using the side of the brush. It's really going to be helpful if I got one more of these guys. See, I can just go like this. Now, this is another thing I try to bring up too for folks is directional strokes, because I've seen people working like this or whatever, and I say, hey, there's all that texture that's been sculpted in there. You can utilize that. So see here, I did the same thing. Set the brush on its side, and it went from a tiny point to something that was probably 3/16 of an inch wide or something. So it basically went from a 32nd of an inch wide to 3/16. So let's hit these guys and Mr. Molotov here. Now he's a little bit more developed than the other ones, because I think must have been a different hangout. Now I was trying to show somebody how I go about doing something like I'm gonna get a little bit of green in there, because if it gets too warm too fast, we don't want that. I think we got this in the right place. Oh, hey, there's Steve. I think he heard his ears burning. Must have heard the ears burning. So hopefully you can see that this right here is not super opaque. Remember the whole with this? It's great for taking the darker washes off, but boy, when you're in this phase and you're looking to just do, so let's just here, we're just gonna smack that on there, and we're gonna dab some of that away. Now to do right here. See, I'm not worried about smoothing that out yet, because I can smooth it out with Mr. Sponge. Because Mr. Sponge likes to do that, and he likes to be helpful. And now I'm not going to call him SpongeBob. Same thing up along these edges here. One of the reasons I like the Secret Weapon paints is that they're sort of formulated to work transparently. And guess what? By working with these transparent paints, and use my thumb again. See, that's not a rock solid color. If I was to paint that over black, see, it doesn't quite cover that all the way. That is intentional. It's why I love the Secret Weapon paints, because they got versatility to them. And I can do several different things. So again, you can see the difference we're starting to make. We're getting some of that light in there. Grab this guy, I got my brush on its side. And see, when I'm not even going to lift the brush off there. Apply it like so. Got my sponge. Can go in there. See how that's a little bit darker than that. Now when I was working on just the one figure by itself, I had more freedom, options, time, whatever, to do that wet blending. Now, if this was oils, boy, that's why I love my oils so much. I wouldn't have to do this. This would all be wet, and I could paint wet into wet for at least one day, potentially two. That's what I love about my oils, and I'm going to be getting back into those. I'm going to get back into those. But Roy needs these tomorrow, because remember, these guys they're going to be out on our Barbarossa table, and oil paints just won't be dry by noon tomorrow. That's just a fact of life. That's how it is. So I have to use acrylics. Now my other figure here, I'll show you some of these wherever I've got those. So this was painted in oils, this guy right here. He was actually done in oils with about a dozen other figures. You could see the obvious benefits. Now here, let's see this collar, or his cuff. I don't want that to be highlighted there, because then it's not really going to contrast with his hand, with his skin. So I'm just going to leave that. Not going to mess around with that. Going to back away from that. Throw some stuff here and just keep tapping away. And there's my two. So let's get some guys that don't have the coats. Look at how that's really keeping this nice and wet. Put this out, geez, probably half an hour ago at least. I don't have my usual timer on this. I suppose, yeah, maybe, because I've got basically my screen is kind of split in half. The XSplit screen that shows what I'm doing, that's taking up the right left-hand half. And the chat thing is just kind of peeking through the final third of the screen. So see how I'm just holding the brush on its side, moving it this way. See, I'm just scumbling this on. It's not necessarily a brush stroke, but there's just a lot of scumbling and blending. Scumbling, you tend to do that almost a little bit more with oils. I would say, I guess, you know, if you're talking about 2D art world, I'm kind of utilizing all of my 2D stuff because I love pastels, really love doing those. And guess what? Pastels are, for the most part, finger painting. So I guess I never lost my love for finger painting. I think the other reason why people say, Jim, why are you mixing so many colors? You could just find a color. Well, finding colors ain't as easy as you think. And you don't always have those colors. Because you can believe, when I was helping Roy paint his initial batches that I'm matching here, he had a whole bunch of kind of the Vallejo colors that the painting guides tell you to buy. Well, those are all back at his house, which is a 40-minute drive from my house. So I needed to just find my own colors and make those work. So see here, I'm just going to scumble that whole thing there, wipe most of it away. Sometimes, I don't know if it's, maybe even Gil might have been one of the people that asked me this. I know a few times people ask me, so Jim, when you're watching other people paint, does it sometimes drive you nuts? And I guess the one thing that will make me go, come on, speed it up, let's go, or just seeing timidness. So here, see how different, that's way lighter than that. All right, I'm going to take some of that away. And I'm just going to force this to be blended here. There is no room for weakness here. There's no room for timidness. The Stavka demands action. So here, take some of that away. Can you imagine trying to paint all of these figures here with endless little stair-step layers of paint? You know, you got a 1 or 2% difference in color And you're going to try and do an army of at least 60 Russian infantry. That's fine, but it's going to take you probably longer than your natural lifetime, or long before the game ceases to exist. One of those two things is going to happen. You don't want that. You want to get the stuff done so you can work with it, but also enjoy it, have fun painting it. And this is one way. Instead of just, it's not endless layers of the same paint. It's look at how much lighter we're getting already, and we're working on 5 guys at the same time. So it is possible. See that? It's a hard edge. Boom, just took it away. Same thing there. I got an edge, took some of that away. Work on that because I want my edge to be here, not over here. So I'm going to do the same thing. Set him down. I'm going to use my finger to take some of that away. Same thing here. And there's no lack of depth to this shading. Years ago, we got caught up into the same notion that if you're going to have depth to your shading, it means endless layers of this and that and the other, and you go back in again and you have to do more transparent glazes, and 75,000 layers later, it's a quarter painted. Well, I'm going to grab my other guy by, you can see here, we did not do endless layers of paint, and yet we have green in the shadows, we have all these different transitions on a one of 65 guys that's going to be out on the board tomorrow. That's the same sort of notion that people would do for their display. I don't make the distinction between the two. So you can see the difference here. So this guy on the right, some more development in his lights and shadows. Let's get our guy here with the bedroll. And I'll do the same thing on them with that verdigris green that you saw, just to make sure there's a little bit of variety that happens there. So there's a couple of reasons again why this works the way it does. The paint is semi-translucent. I want to say it's only 85% pure paint, maybe less. Might only be 70, and 30% water. It looks like I'm putting opaque layers over the top of it. Your eye reads them as opaque. They're definitely not. You definitely see how translucent that is. You can see the palette right through it. Let's get this guy here. See how my brush is flattened out on the tip a little bit? That makes it just perfect for what I want to do here. I'll set the brush on its side again. And now I'm going to use the opposite side, the sharp side. Get a couple of those little highlights there. Get down on the cuff of the sleeve. See, I'm not going to do before. I used to, yeah, you can't see it. See where my finger's pointing right here? I used to highlight the snot out of that too. And then I realized, well, yeah, that's kind of in shadow. Really shouldn't be a whole bunch of highlights there. Your mind said, well, it's a natural place to highlight. This knee is sticking sticking under the underside here of this, but a couple, that's it. Leave it go. So we got one more guy here. One last guy with the last vestiges of this. Then I'm going to I'll go back to the green again. So that would be, that'd be 6, right, that we worked on. There's, I think, about 3 more. There's the one laying down pose. That'll be another good one. So you can see, there's even still here. Look at, see the green in this area here. There's some reddish tones here, some green here. It happened by default because if you remember those initial glazes that I did to darken things down, I varied the color. It wasn't just the same, what is that, Army Painter Strong Tone. That's something that Roy really enjoys. I like it too. Actually, it's pretty neat. The brown liner, in effect, is sort of a similar type thing. But you can take that strong tone, you can actually mix it with other regular colors. I know there's also different colors of strong tone. So instead of just going with, okay, they're brown, I'm going to go with a brown wash. Well, maybe you mix green and red together, make your own brown, and then you're going to get a lot more variety. Let's see, I don't think I have to, I don't have to scroll there quite the same way I do that I'm doing a Facebook Live. If I don't scroll the chat thing, it does not necessarily keep up and I end up falling behind. I don't know, probably Gil is the only person who could really get a sense of how much lag time there is from when I say something or when maybe somebody sends me a question and when I can actually say something back to them. Because again, this is my first time using XSplit for a YouTube Live. And I'm glad I did because I really wanted to get, where's somebody that looks sort of close to that. So, whoops, man. Because we got this uniform about right there. Obviously, he's got a helmet on. So, we've got a little, I'm going to make this even a little bit lighter. See how that's not covering this completely. And that's the idea, is that it's basically a semi-transparent light glaze. So I'm not going to go too crazy with this. All I'm trying to do is get a few lighter highlights here. Just a few, not much. A couple of touches there, set him off to the side. Same thing on him. Just going to find a few spots. Just a few accents here and there. Now these guys, they're not going to have snow on them like the Russians that I did. These were just some extra lads that Roy's using to fill out his squads tomorrow. Because I think the one thing he hasn't tried so far is full squads. So, there we go. You have anywhere from a 10 to 15 second lag. Yeah. What's interesting, I think with Facebook it was anywhere between 5 and 7 seconds or something. At least that's what some of the folks were telling me. I'm just still, actually, I don't think you were on there, Gil, early when I first started doing this. It was bizarre. I had all kinds of reverb going on. I mean, it was like a massive echo, which was really strange since there are no speakers or microphones or webcams on this computer. They don't exist. There's just the one webcam and my microphone / ear setup that I use. And all I can figure is that I got booby-trapped by XSplit when it said something like you can watch your stream here. And I thought that meant, okay, good, I can see the visuals of what I'm working on. And instead, I think what ended up happening was not only was I working on the stuff, but then it sort of set me up as a viewer. That's why, that's why there was the lag. That's probably what it was. So I definitely will not click on that ever again. Because basically, I think what it was doing was saying, hey, do you want to watch yourself while your other self works? And that's no good. That's like time travel and meeting yourself. So which is never good, because then you end up with like a Fu Manchu or something like that, and things go bad. You end up with the Fu Manchu running around the halls with a sword or something. So if you don't want to have a Fu Manchu, never press that button. So that's a few little lights. Alright, I don't think I need to mess around too much with that. So let's get to our green. So these 5 here, what are we going to do? I'm going to try and do the same thing with this green that we did over here. So hey, look at that. I'm actually going to clean out the brush. Got this. I'm going to put out some more of that brown liner. And I'm going to have a few different mixes here. That's a brownish green right there. And again, both of these work really well being watered down. So I think I got that right about in the right space. So here, I'm really focusing in on the crevices. Look at that. I can wipe some of the excess away just like before. Certainly going to focus around this with some of the green right in here, because that's where we're going to make that belt be red. Yeah, boy, I'm glad. It was such a mystery what was going on, because it was like I think Bethany heard the story of this. Must have been, actually it was 2016, because it's still there on my freaking YouTube page, where she and we were going to do a Google Hangout on air, and we had her machine and my machine. They were both on it, and they were both in the same room, and we didn't have the headsets. I think I had one, but she didn't. And it wasn't just an echo. It was an echo of an echo of an echo. It was so many echoes, I was losing my mind. So I think in some ways I did the same thing. So let's pull up. See how now we got the same green here down in the crevices of the brown. So it's showing 0 frames dropped. That's the one thing I can see in my XSplit here. So the signal must not be too bad. I have no idea. I heard that the sound was fine from Bethany, and well, YouTube should. I know Facebook Live is trying to get to a higher quality video, but hopefully the YouTube thing. See, green under the sleeve. Where's my medic? So the same thing that I was doing on the medic on the right, that's what we're doing to this guy on the left. We're getting some green there. I think we just have a few more of these to do with this green. And all this is, again, trying to get a little more of an interesting tone out of the shadow. See that? What we just did right there in that shadow. Oh, it's shiny. It's going to be hard to see. Does a few things where I see where some of that initial wash / glaze / shading might have gotten a little bit rugged or rough. toning that down. Sound and audio is good. Thanks, Gil. That's good to know. I figured it would kind of have to be, but I think the other YouTube lives, the sound and everything seem to behave itself well. So again, we're just taking this green, hitting a few key spots. See, I felt that this was too light here, so I just toned that down. Just toned it down. Same thing. So now I've got my 5 guys again, and I'm going to throw out some of the, was it the red rust? Red rust. Say that 10 times fast. Not doing that, because that would not be a good idea. So we're going to grab some of this here. And pop some of this reddish brown on these straps, belts, some of the pouches. Same thing here. I think what I'll actually, I'll get to show it won't be to a huge degree, but the Vallejo metal medium, that's the other thing I wanted to make sure that I got to while I was doing this. I think, yeah, that's that. Is there a stock to be seen here? Yep, there's a stock up there. I'll bring this guy back. Just remembered his stock. Here, belt, which again is going to show up a little bit more because you got that green against red. The other important thing, and I talk about the pillars of contrast, the different ways. First it was the triple play, but then I realized there's about 5 different ways. You can get contrast, and you're going to see an example of that here. It's not just light versus dark. It's, in a way, you can see green here, where I'm pointing to. There's green, and the strap has that reddish brown to it. So it's that same thing where you got green and red contrasting each other. If all I had was tan, yeah, I could put like a dark brown line or something in between the two. But when you just do a line, it starts to flatten things out. And what was the point of having 3D miniatures if you're just going to flatten them out? So you're kind of being counterproductive there. So why not help accentuate that contrast? So here we're not going to see much in the way of belt buckles, but I know I don't want to hit that stock there. These pouches are going to get a few shots, and then there. I'm going to lighten that up just a tad. Go right back in. Touch a few of these things here. Stock. A few hits on the pouches. Again, the belt. Straps. Onto the stock. Some of these things, I know it's going to be tough to see them on camera. Back to the belt. What do we got left here? We got a stock here we need to hit. A belt there. Another belt here. And you can have pretty much done all of this stuff without... I think there's a stock I need to get on this too, yeah. Done all of this. There's been no white so far. That's the other demon of miniature painting that I see all too often. And not only am I going to make the highlight color for the straps, but now I'm starting to make skin tone. Again, I always recommend just making your own skin tones because, well, you see what I use for my white. It's that maiden flesh color, which in no way resembles flesh. It's just a really, really light color. That's all it is. I'll use it as a highlight on this. But other than that, not so much. So, that same green that I was using to highlight all of the uniforms with works just as well as the skin tone because we're mixing. And you say, why in the world are you mixing green and red? Well, it is. No, I don't have. Oh, here we go. So can you see where I just barely see where I painted that? That's not a bad flesh tone right there. Just perfect for this. Now, what I also did, and I'll bring back the painted one that we're going to try and get to here. So you can see that this one it's got its highlights. See the rosiness added to the cheeks there. We'll get through all of that stuff too. At least that's the plan. Where's my belts here? So what I need to do is make sure I've got a little bit of yellow to this. I'm gonna sit here and it's okay. So it does let me scroll there. Now that's interesting. So I just went to my YouTube page, and what it does let me do, I can actually see myself painting there, but that window is really, really tiny. Really tiny. So let's go up here. Just trying to find myself a couple of highlights on the top of that strap. And we got some more to do here. A little bit there. A little bit there. And if you feel the need, you can go back in and do a much tighter highlight line. Now this, let's see if I can do it with this. You know, your eye is going to perceive what I just did here as a super light. That's going to look really, really light what I just did there. Now let's say we just clean this out real quick. You grab a finer brush. I'm going to put out an actual light color, and you'll see the big difference. Thin this down a little bit. So that looks like a bright highlight, when in fact that's nowhere near the brightest. So I obviously have way more room to go. And that's the idea. That's why I kind of work from the middle out like that, because it just gives me more room to maneuver. I just wanted to. This is that bluish white color. Just wanted to establish where the eyes might be. The medic symbol there. Still got my brown liner. Just getting some darks around the eyes here. Trying to get this where you can see it. And let's use that brown liner here. Get the hair to be a bit darker, a little differentiation from the beret. There we go. Now that I've got this brown liner, I'm going to mix a little bit of the tan color with it. And the one thing with these, sometimes you have to force a little bit of detail in there, because these are plastic kits and they're designed to be posed in many, many different ways, which means sometimes the detail in an area might get a little bit smushy, if we can call it that. So I'm just using my hand to get rid of some of the excess. I just turn it, so I'm not, what is that, the dreaded term, black lining, or whatever the heck they call it. That's not what this is. All we're trying to do is sharpen up a few areas here. And just accentuate some shading. That's all I'm trying to do with that. I got this. What if we were to do a bit of this? So a little bit of chipping on the helmets here. Again, sometimes when you have the color out and you're thinking about it, maybe that's the time to do something like that. See, I'm just putting some tiny dots here on the helmet again to represent a little bit of chipping. Got my next guy here, so this is where I'm going to do a few things. Gonna strengthen up some of this detail. I'm just gonna darken down. It's not a bread bag, I think that's actually his canteen there. See, I can take away the excess. So under here, same thing. Gotta reestablish this edge because it got a little soft. Yeah, it's a little bit sharper now. Same thing here. Sometimes the brush just goes over an edge. We can just restore that. Down here on the underside of that belt and move on. I think that's the other thing I try to emphasize for folks is just move on. Don't linger. Don't linger too long in one spot. Because another phrase that pays for me, I use it all the time, is think long, think wrong. The more you ponder something and think about it, you end up just second guessing yourself. Then you end up caught in between, and it doesn't work for defensive backs, baseball players, or just painters. It works for nobody. Doesn't work at all. Just a bad place to be. So here is another instance where we're gonna put some chips on the helmet. So this one, the colors are kind of so dark you barely can perceive it, and that is actually a good thing. You don't necessarily want to go, hey, look here, I put chipping on this. That's a little bit too much there. It's not supposed to be quite so noticeable. It's supposed to be there, but you don't have to beat people over the head with it. So here we go. Just strengthening up a few of these edges here where the hand is. That just got, again, a little bit smushy. So what do? We just strengthen it. Same thing here, even now. A few places. I'm going to strengthen up those darks. I'm going to do it on this guy. Again, go back to the chipping on the helmet. I've got just a few different ways you could approach that. You could use a little sponge, like the sponges you've seen me using. I've done that too. That works really nicely. So, some chips there. I still have some green. Just checking for questions. Now, I've got a slightly lighter version of this. Just going to see where the chips are. Just do a few of these light touches. I'm only going to do it on the helmets. I think I did this with some of my German helmets, and I really liked that. That was very fun. I think I even did it on a few of the British units. Not going to do it here where we've got our lighting effect. But I'm going to hit that bedroll a little bit with some of that green. Maybe in these boots a little bit with the green. On his winter hat, hit it with a little bit of this green. So I'm just having part of it's a little bit of fun, but also it's just to register as something that's different from everything else that you're looking at. And I'm going to leave these three up here because those haven't been messed with. What we're going to do now is find, wherever that may be, my Vallejo metal medium. That's this here. This is where the liner paints come in. Very handy. So remember my blue liner? Just pretend there's a blue liner label on that. So we're going to just put out I can just take this, squeeze it, blam. Drop comes out exactly what I want. Never gets clogged. I absolutely love that. And I just got the jar on it. See, well, speaking of clogged, this one is clogged. I'm going to grab my pin here and unclog that. Does not take much of this stuff at all. Now, for those watching this here, I've got at least one, maybe two Facebook Live sessions. So, see how that has a little bit of a shine. See, it's not all that light, but see how it's catching the light? It's because it's got metallic in there. It's not much lighter of a color than this black lid that it's on. And remember how we went this way with the brush? We're going to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to slide the brush along this. Slide the brush along. And I've got a few, see, that's kind of what I did here on this gun. I also have my Charlemagne division. So on his submachine gun there, or is that his assault rifle? I think it might actually be his submachine gun. Same thing there, kind of a bluish Now this is definitely a submachine gun. It's not a dry brush. This paint is plenty fluid. You can see it doesn't look that much difference. Now it has a little bit of a shininess to it, but it still has that bluish black. I mean, the last thing these guys wanted was shiny guns. You know, these aren't arquebuses they're running around with. They're trying to actually remain somewhat hidden. So I'm going to do the same thing here. The sweet thing is, again, any color you mix that metal medium with becomes metallic. But the more of this you add to your mixture, the lighter it gets. So you don't need the mithril silver and the 10 billion different colors of silver. You just need this. And if I had used the brown liner, I would have had, see that on the clip there? And I was really glad I had this one because we were having this discussion also last night in the Styrene Syndicate Hangout about the whole metallic, true metallic, non-metallic, everything else. This lets you do some really nifty true metallic. It also lets you do some color shifting metallics, and I've got something here I can show you. Alright, so I'm going to let that set up here. But this is another thing I painted in a Facebook Live. Get her in focus. So see all these different colors in the metal. That is that same metal medium mixed with a bunch of Reaper Clear paints and other stuff along those lines. So it's actually another Warlord figure. That's from, what is that, the Gates of Antares line. So now we've got a little bit more, that metal medium. See how it's a little bit lighter? That's what we're going to do here. And guess what? I'm going to do a little bit more on the top there. So see, we're already getting a little rotation there around. Oh, is this the PPH? There's the two distinct different types of Soviet submachine guns. And this one with the, I think it's the light machine gun, has the drum that goes on top of the gun. And this particular submachine gun has the clip that hangs underneath it. But mostly what was needed for tomorrow is some more rifles. So that's why you're seeing mostly rifles here. There's a few submachine guns, but here, let's look at this. So in a way, this is kind of true. I'm going to get right in the focus spot. So I'm just lightening that down there a little bit. Get a little more of the metal medium in there. So see, it's dark up here and light down here. So in some ways, you're doing this. That's the same kind of effect I would do with non-metallic paints. Same sort of thing. Except I'm doing it just with the metal medium mixed in. So again, I'm getting a few different colors to the metals by doing this. I'm gonna make sure I have enough metal medium, but also not make it too bright, too shiny. Don't want to make it too bright and shiny because, I mean, sometimes these guys would just take dirt or whatever, put on these guns so that you just couldn't see them. Again, it's not terribly useful if you've got this bright shiny thing that advertises your presence to everybody that would like to shoot at you. That's not so good. And we'll finish out this stage. I think we got a bayonet here that's in the unfixed position. Because I've done a lot of the winter Russians, but I have not done much in the way of the summer uniforms. Yeah, I think I've got a tray with some more of the winter guys that I can bring out in a second. So again, we're going back over here. This is that Vallejo metal medium. So you just take some of this, you mix it with your color, and like I said, you now instantly have a metallic color that's a color. Because, you know, there's plenty of companies that make gold and silver and copper. But what if you wanted a metallic skin tone color for whatever reason? Or, I know I used the metal medium when I was trying to do as a Lord of the Rings figure, and I wanted Sauron in basically standing in like a lava fire base. And I needed to be able to reflect the lava on the metal. The only way to do it without the lava just looking like some flat orange paint was to mix this metallic stuff with it. So here we go. Again, we don't want to hit this too much. Just a few more touches. Just like our finished guy here, we want it to be muted. So this one's actually a black tree design figure right here. So let's set we got our 6 guys here. We're gonna set them off to the side because we wanted to get back to our medic over here. Gilbert ordered some of that yeah, and then there's what was that we were messing with last night too, some of the pearl white. Actually, this is, I'm going to put some of this in my next layer. See where I'm doing the splash effect on this? I put on a few more layers now. So on the tips of this, you know, where you want the white stuff, so I'm going to mix this pearl white with, mix that in with the gel. See how that works out. So the verdigris blue. And the neat thing about the secret weapon stuff, just it tends to dry more flat. I talk about this all the time. So see how this is my initial colors. I put these out like an hour and a half ago, and they're still usable. I'm gonna grab some of this. Gonna mix it with a little bit of my brown liner here. And we obviously have a few places we're going to start up with this blue. But being secret weapon, it's also going to be a little bit transparent. It's, to you guys watching on screen, it's probably imperceptible. But some of the underlying color is showing through, and I'm actually not trying to paint over all of it. So here's your Bray. May be able to see it a little better on this. You can see there's just a touch of that tan showing from underneath. Right? We've still got, this is sort of a pure version of that color. I'm going to make sure you got it where you guys can see it. Now it's a little bit more intense because we're just using sort of the straight up verdigris blue. Gonna go around back to the beret, which, yep, that's on camera. See, I'm not using the point. I'm I drag that across so it covers kind of the whole beret. Bang. And just gonna throw some of my, I think it's called mega white or something like that. It's my off white. I also had used this. Throw them both out there. I take this, gonna mix it in with my verdigris blue here. This is going to end up being a little bit more of the traditional, building up the lighter layers. Because it's just a one figure. Don't have to worry quite as much about saving time. So ultimately, this is what, figure number 6? 7. I think it's 7 figure number 7 that we're working on. And that's something that I'm trying to emphasize more with my Patreon page. You see that scrolling by there. Those are some videos that I'm working on for, I think it's these $15 pledge level. I think it's called the Army Painter. Huge creative genius there to come up with that name, but whatever. And it's like this. Just how you see me working on 5, 6 guys. The idea is that in a little more of a detailed form, not quite as hectic as this, show you how I go about painting multiple figures at the same time, but still giving them that higher quality treatment, as if they were just a one-off display piece. Because these, and you can see there's a lot of depth to these. We got the greens, you see the skin tones have some depth. That's why I've got this one saved here, so we can do a little bit of the skin tones. See here, I'm not making this as light as this, because in some ways the coat casts a shadow over this. I guess just flip it so you guys can see that. And I won't do too many more levels of this. I'll just see what this yields right here. Actually, here, let's take some of this maiden flesh, and it's not just to make it lighter, it's also to shift the color just a little bit. Because it was starting to look too much like the same blue. We spent all of this time trying to make the tans have a little more interest to them, right? To have them have some green, some red. And then we're going to do this blue here, and it's just all going to be one shade lighter of blue. It's going to look very out of place if all of a sudden you have just nothing but pure blues. So this is also, it's about shifting that blue to a different color. So here I want this to have a decent highlight. But it's also the same color that I used to highlight the skin tone. A few little dots there. And that's good enough. Now we need to, just like we were doing tan before, let's get some tan on this uniform here. Because we start out doing the darker glazes. So this is where I had done before, remember, on the mid-tones. Sort of bring those back. The one thing about the historical figures is that you can try and find all the references you want, but they will be contradictory to each other. So I'm going to grab my... See, there's even a little bit of green that's just sitting in my brush because I've been working with so much of the blue. I'm going to see here, make sure there's no new comments. So now we're getting into our highlights on the shoulder. And remember, we can always go in with finger, make adjustments on the elbow, shoulder, but I don't want to say there's some nice kind of reddish brown, and I don't want to lose that entirely. I may even go in there and remember I was talking about scumbling earlier in the video. That's sort of what I'm doing here. It's almost like I want to try and paint a little bit of texture in the clothes. A little bit of texture. Now I don't know if Roy's got any medics in his list or not. I'm guessing probably not. I think in all the time that I've had medics in the army, they've not done any good in healing wounds. That has not worked out. Not rolled too many sixes. So just like I said before, this is, see, I'm just scumbling this in because it's not a dry brush. There's plenty of paint on that brush. It's just in the way type of brush stroke that I'm using. One of the reasons I like the bigger brushes, it goes back to my watercolor days, but you can see that this brush holds it. See, look, there's even still blue paint in there. Look at that. But yet, when I paint here, no blues coming out of that. It just holds more paint, which means I can spend more time painting and less time going back to the stupid palette to have to get more paint. So just like I was before on the regular infantry, just finding the best places for highlights on the sleeve. And they actually, especially, well, I made my original one that's going to have a snow base on it. Most time they essentially wore pants underneath the dresses. So let's just hit a few of these spots. See, I can always take stuff away if there's too much. A few highlights there. We say enough is enough there. Let's get some of that. I think it was called red rust. That's the secret weapon there. Throw a little bit of this out. Also doing this because we're going to be getting back into some skin tones. So we got some pouches we're going to do. Especially this one. Her medical bag here. We will be putting some lights on this, but also on the belt. It does actually have a pistol. Get this. Alright, like so. Pistol case. The boots tended to be kind of a bluish black, so I'm gonna grab some blue liner and throw a glaze over those. So I think you got a strap right there. And rest of the bag there. Now I've got a few colors I can use to lighten this up. I am going to take some of my tan. Start to lighten this up. Yeah, I could use a smaller brush. It's no big deal. I think you saw it. Now it's going to be coming out in a second here when I go to work on the face and the eyes and all that. But you can see the pounding that this brush takes. It's still got a nice, I've been using it for some pretty rough glazing and other things. And this is already the 7th figure that we're painting with it, so it saves that wear and tear. So now your nice brushes stay nicer for longer, i.e. expensive brushes. And you just sort of let these down and dirty brushes, let them take some of that abuse and punishment. So just like on a regular infantry. And if I need to, I can always go back, grab some of that red rust and make that be a little bit more of a transition. See what I did there? I wiped off some of the red rust and got back to some of the lighter color there. And where is my verdigris green? Because I wanted to show you that once more. So scan from secret weapon. Missing a little bit out here. Throw a little bit of that there. I'm going to get that same green that you see here. That same green. Still got my, see this big old thing of brown liner. It's still right there, just waiting for me to use it. Making myself semi-glazed type thing here. Get this where you can see it. Gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do some green here. See how that red starts to show up. It's not just the fact that there is a line there, but it's got some green. And guess what? I'm gonna put that in the shadows of the pouches too. Water this down tiny bit, even a little bit more. Get some green down into into that shadow area. Here on some of the pouch. Just like I did on the other one. Over here. Because I think he's got kind of a grassy type base on all of his things. So, there would be a little bit of that greenish color reflected onto the uniform. We're even going to do it on some of the boots here. Even on the pouch, on the boots, a little bit on the hair. So now we've got ourselves some green here. Now we can go back to a smaller brush like that, the one that I just tossed at you. And I'm going to use the same colors that I've been using for all this other stuff. Remember how I made a flesh tone before? We're going to do that again. And this is probably about as light as what I had there. Let's make sure you can see that. So I think we've got back to our mid-tone skin color. See, this is where I can take now that maiden flesh and start to lighten it a little bit. But because there's a little bit of color to it, it doesn't get all chalky and nasty. It remains basically a color. And like I mentioned before, it's a little bit easier on your brushes to do all of the heavy, nasty work with the brushes that are kind of designed to have rigorous use. And then save the delicate work. The delicate brushes. Now you see I'm working my way around those eyes. Can go back into the maiden flesh here, lighten this up a little bit more. Keep going with the face here. I think I'll just leave this one with the darker hair. And then lightening here on the cheekbones, upper lip, on that chin. Go back in, do this side of the face. Back down here. Now, once I get this to a certain point, where's my... So this is the Reaper Clears. I really enjoy those. This is something I typically do for skin tones to... And it's not just on, say, cheekbones or whatever to get them have be a little bit rosy. I do it on hands because there are a lot of blood vessels in your hands, so you can get some pinks in there like we're going to do on these. See, I'm just a little bit of pink in there. And here on the side of the face, just to give it a touch of, so it's slightly lighter. You can see the skin tone that was there. See how it's got now? It's got a little bit of pinkishness to it. So it's doing a couple of things. It's getting us some highlights, but it's also giving us some color. And if I add a little more maiden flesh, I'm trying to do some reflected light here. Just a touch of reflected light. Because everybody's face has reflected light. Some stuff on the lips there. Now, I'm going to take even some more. I'm going to bring back maiden flesh for a few highlights on the face, and then I'm going to try and get into things like the eyes and do a few little doodads on that. Again, on some of these things, I may not do absolutely everything because the camera angle, sometimes where I need to hold it to paint it, is an angle where you're not going to be able to see it. Because even right here, it's difficult for me to get the brush at the angle that I need. It may not be the greatest, most optimal angle for you to view it. So I'm going to try and get some highlights on the face. I'm just going to take some of this and throw it up here. So this is why I typically don't have the little palette cover when I'm just doing my Facebook Lives on one figure. As you can see, I'm working so fast that I end up having to go back there. So we got some teeth in there now. Got some teeth. Gonna do a little bit of light on the forehead. My research shows that the star is usually actually kind of a gold. I thought it was red. I had to end up repainting that. The ear, chin, nose. Gonna get this other cheek here. Gotta turn this around. And just looking to get one little dot of light there. Brown liner. Oh, blue liner, sorry. That's good. This is when we were working on our metals. So I'm going to get this ready to go here. You can see I've got some that's a little bit thinner, some that's a little bit thicker. Let's see if we can do some eyes here. I think I've got it where you can see it. So we got an eyebrow, eyelid. Take some of this and get it out from under here so I can get to it a little bit easier. And now for the eye itself. Sorry, I had to hold my breath. You see how the eye is attached right there. It's not separate, so she doesn't look too freaked out. So you can attach that dot that I put in. It's attached to the upper eyelid. Let's see if I can do it on this side. It might be a little easier for you to see it here. So there's the eyebrow. Eyelid. And the eye itself. So now we got both eyes in there. Both eyes, and see there's a little bit of an expression. She just has semi-horrified look, I guess, because she's heading to the area where there's lots of probably body parts laying around. And this is why, again, I recommend you have, see, I've got my red here, so I can mix up darker red, kind of get upper lip here. And then got some green. So I'm basically mixing kind of a reddish gray. Again, try and get this where you can see it. And now this is what I want to do. See, I'm restoring a little bit of light there, because I don't want it to be too dark there. It's too dark, yeah. Just wouldn't be quite so dark. But it is a shadow still, so that's why it's a little bit grayish. And all I'm trying to do is right there. So I don't want that to be as dark. The shadow, and also see how it brings out the eyebrows a little bit. Here's my original one. So we're just getting ourselves a little expression there. I still got my red, some of that blue. Hopefully you can see this. Just gonna quickly put the red cross on this. Sorry if I don't necessarily talk while I'm doing that. That's me holding my breath. That's what I usually do when I'm working on my freehand stuff. Hold my breath, slow down the heartbeat. So I can go in here and clean things up. Do a little more in the way of highlighting. So now, didn't take long for us to end up with, so I'm going to get a little bit of my, that was the Griffin tan, I think. Right. Get that back out there. And now it's time to find a few highlight spots, and this is one. Because we got the small brush out. Here's another one. Another one. And right, like so. Yeah. I need this edge. Have a little bit of highlight to it. So it looks kind of like some kind of red leather. Well, leather. Doesn't have to be red leather, but something along the lines of leather. Sorry. It's been another long day. I've been painting Oh geez, at least 12, 13 hours today. Gonna scroll over here, make sure there's no, okay, don't see anything in the comments there. So we pretty much, we've been working on, so this was barely, not even started, and we're basically making a second medic here. So this was about as developed as this guy was when we started. Maybe not even that much. Now I was talking earlier about the, remember I had the blue liner out and want to make these boots maybe look more black. Well, blue and brown make black. So a little bit of a bluish glaze over the top of the boots. Since they're brown already, it's going to make that seem a bit more like black. And I can go back, grab my smaller brush here, take that white, take something to make it lighter. Think that's on camera. Now, highlight that edge just a tiny bit. Highlight that edge just a tiny bit. I don't want to make these shiny. Just want them to be darker. And that's all it takes. So you got a medic figure that we painted, I want to say in 40 minutes, not even, maybe around like a half an hour. Didn't take too long. And she goes along with the rest of the unit here. And again, we showed you how we had these things with their middle tones and everything. See, well, we restored the darks. I need to put some red stars on these guys. I'm going to throw my clear red back out here again. Clear red. Tone it down. Get some of these stars going here. Nothing fancy. I think basically everybody that's got the fur hats has a star. Give him a star. Blammo. And I don't think any of these guys had, nope, there were no stars on them. So that's pretty well set then. So again, you can see the difference between the greenish color in the shadows. We got the reddish brown here. And that's, I'm actually I'm gonna stop this one here. But I want to thank everybody that's watched this. I want to share this. I'm not quite sure if this, I might go back and if I've got a recording of this, I might try to resolve the sound issue thing that happened at the beginning, and then post it as more of a edited YouTube video. I don't know. This was, again, the first time I'd ever done a YouTube live with XSplit. So I didn't think it was actually going to start going live. And all the tutorials that I saw, they said, hey, and it's great because it won't go live till you want it to. And next thing you know, it was, you're live. There's people watching. And you got this massive sound reverberation going on. So I'm adding a few little highlights here. And this is even with blue liner, not even bothering to go back and get brown liner. Just going through, finding things that I maybe want to sharpen up. And let's see if I want to, potentially lighten up a highlight or two. I'm going to get my maiden flesh back out here. Get a little bit of that. Do it on some of these belts here, because this top edge would catch some light. There you go. Maybe a touch on that strap. Tone it down. Might even go with almost more of an orange red in some places on that stock. And it's about getting a little variety in the color here. A few touches. Some of these stocks. On here. Need a quick highlight on this. Belt. Got to do something with this pouch here. See how I'm doing the same thing? I just threw some paint on, took some away. And all of a sudden it looks like you just put layers of paint on there. But there's not layers of paint there. Thanks a lot, Gilbert. Appreciate that. So I'm going to see if I can stop this. But here's what we did. So we got all these guys done. Showing you how to do some of this stuff in a reasonable time. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.